Have you ever seen someone in trouble and just frozen? You wanted to help, but something just held you back? Well, you're not alone. So today, we're going to dig into the powerful psychology behind why we sometimes fail to help strangers, and more importantly, what we can actually do to change that.
All right, let's start with a real story. This is from Sarah. She was on a packed train during rush hour, and all of a sudden, she starts feeling warm, dizzy. A full-blown panic attack is setting in. As her vision starts to go dark, she stumbles off the train, and right then, a total stranger, a girl about her age, grabs her arm, sits her down on a bench, and just talks her through it until she's okay. Sarah's story, it really captures that critical moment of choice.
And that really is the core question, isn't it? In that crowded train car, dozens of people saw what was happening, but only one person stepped up. So what's the difference? What turns a passive bystander into an active helper? Stick with me, because we're about to break down the science behind that split-second decision.
Okay, so the biggest reason we hesitate, it actually has a name, the bystander effect. It's one of the most studied phenomena in social psychology, and it really explains why the heroes in these situations can be so rare.
So here's the core idea, and it's kind of crazy because it's totally counterintuitive. The more people who witness an emergency, the less likely it is that any single one of them will step in to help. It's a paradox, right? There's supposed to be safety in numbers, but what we actually get is inaction in numbers.
So, why does this happen? Well, it pretty much boils down to two really powerful psychological forces. First, you've got diffusion of responsibility. This is where our brain just kind of assumes someone else is going to take charge. We think, oh, surely a doctor or someone more qualified will step in. And then there's social influence. We are hardwired to look at other people for clues on how to act. If nobody else seems worried, we start to doubt ourselves and think, maybe this isn't a real emergency after all.
Think of it like a mental obstacle course you have to run through before you can help. First, you have to actually notice something is happening. Then you have to interpret it as an actual emergency. Then, and this is the big one, you have to assume personal responsibility. After all that, you still have to feel like you know how to help before you finally make that decision to intervene. That chain can break at any one of those steps.
But it's not just about how many people are around. Even when we're alone, we face what's called the helper's dilemma. See, our brain is running this lightning-fast, subconscious risk assessment every single time we're faced with a choice to help.
It's like this constant tug-of-war happening inside our heads. On one side, you have your social preference. That's our natural urge to help, to be a good person. But that's fighting against our risk preference, which is our powerful, deep-seated instinct for self-preservation. So a refusal to help isn't always about being selfish. Sometimes it's just your brain trying to keep you safe.
And our hesitation is rooted in some very real, very human anxieties. We're afraid for our own safety. We're worried we'll misread the whole situation and look like an idiot. We're just not sure what's going on. And of course, there's that nagging feeling that someone else, someone more qualified, will probably handle it.
Now this is a huge one. I think a lot of us have that little voice in the back of our head asking, what if I try to help and I mess up? What if I make things worse? Can I get sued for this? It's a legitimate fear, and it stops a lot of really well-intentioned people right in their tracks.
But here's the good news. In a lot of places, the legal system actually wants you to help. They're called Good Samaritan laws, and they're specifically designed to protect you from being sued as long as you act reasonably and try to do the right thing. Their whole purpose is to encourage you to act, not punish you for trying. Where we live also plays a massive role. Just look at this data on helping behaviors in big cities around the world. The differences are just staggering. In Rio de Janeiro, people helped in 93% of staged emergencies, but in New York, it was only 45%. Clearly, our culture kind of programs us to respond in very different ways.
And a key reason for that difference is a cultural value called sympathia, which is really prominent in many Latin American and Spanish societies. It's basically this proactive focus on being friendly, polite, and helpful to everyone, including strangers. It creates a social expectation of helpfulness that just doesn't really exist in the same way in other cultures.
Okay, so we've looked at the barriers, right? The psychology, the fear, the cultural norms. But how do we actually break through them? I promised you a solution, and here it is. This is your toolkit for becoming an active bystander. Look, you don't have to be a superhero. These are 4 simple, direct techniques. You can just speak up. A simple "are you okay" can completely shatter the bystander effect. You can try a group intervention by grabbing someone near you and saying, "Hey, let's go check on them together." You can distract and redirect by asking for the time or for directions to just break the tension.
Or sometimes the most powerful tool is just the silent stare, just letting them know you see what's happening.
So, why should we push past all our discomfort and actually do something? Well, because the act of helping creates this incredible ripple effect. And honestly, the first person it often benefits is ourselves.
Okay, get this number. A study found that 63% of adults say that being kind to others has a positive impact on their own mental health. It reduces stress, it boosts your mood, it increases your self-esteem. Helping others is literally a form of self-care.
And this is the ultimate takeaway. This quote comes from a woman, Thera Catherine, who was having an absolutely horrible day when a stranger, who, it turns out, was the rapper Ludacris, paid for all her groceries. His small act changed everything for her in that moment. We so rarely get to see the full impact of our actions.
The person you see might be like Sarah, on the verge of a medical emergency. Or they might be like Thera, just reeling from a loss. You just don't know their story. But now, by understanding the barriers and knowing the tools, you have the power to help write a better next chapter for them. So the only question left is, what will you choose to do?